Alright, thank you all for watching again. This is my testimony of surviving COVID-19 part 5. So again, I left off at my whole plan to escape the hospital. So I'm laying there, I'm working myself up mentally. So I go and I say, it's time for me to get out of here. And so I disconnect the catheter. Yep, disconnected it. And I go, all right, now I have to get the socks off because they're like connected to the bed or something, so I wouldn't be able to leave without it. So I go to sit up. I'm fighting, trying to sit up to get to these socks, but I can't. Now I'm like, oh crap, I didn't think this through well enough. I should have started with the socks first. And I'm like, man, I'm in my head like, man, you big dummy. What was you thinking? Why would you start with the catheter first instead of the socks? And then that's when God started talking to me. I was just laying there. And he was, might I mentioned that they lost all my stuff. They couldn't find any of my stuff the whole time. I remember my clothes, my phone, or anything. And I found out that God wanted me with no distraction, and that's why they couldn't find my phone. They were looking, they kept every day, because my wife was calling them and saying, you lost his phone? You better, because she wanted to talk to me, and she was highly upset. Like, you lost his cell phone, this and this and this. He's like, and I can't talk to him. So she was giving them the flux. So they were all calling security, trying to track down exactly, because like I said, they were rushing me from room to room, and so my stuff got lost in the midst. So I'm in there, and I'm like, and that's when I started hearing God talk to me. He said, you always reacted to stuff. You always reacted. He was like, when somebody's nasty to you, they expect you to be nasty back. He said, that's what they know. He said, what they don't expect is for you to love them back. He said, that's the only thing that's going to conquer that person. That's the only thing that's going to defeat it, when you learn to love them back. Because the whole time, like I said, but going in there, I was getting angrier and angrier. I'll talk more about that at the end. I want to get through this. But he was telling me that, and I was just like, man, And I started thinking, I was like, before, it was like I felt differently, and I hadn't noticed it. Before, I didn't want nobody hugging me, Like I hug folk, but it was like, it was something I did because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. Like if people hugging people at church, but like when I first got saved and was going to church, like when they would hug each other afterwards, I would bolt out of the church to avoid hugging people. And and eventually I got used to it, and I was like, oh, but it was like I got used to those people. It was like family members and stuff like that. It was like just made me feel icky, and going in there, I was getting more and more frustrated. I didn't want to be around anybody. Like I said, some of you saw my Facebook post a while ago that I was saying that I was tired. I was tired doing ministry, and just helping people, and then they want God until they get on their feet and they get good, and then they're back to doing the way they were before. And I'm just sitting there like, I've just poured all this energy, time, and resources to this person, and they're back to doing what they were before. And I'm just like, I was tired of seeing it. So I was frustrated going in there. It was to the point I didn't want anybody around me. It was like the happiest days was when like my wife would take the kids and her, and they would go, and I had the house myself. That's when I was the happiest. It was like, yes, I didn't want people to call me on the phone, voicemail. I'll play my games. I just want to be left alone. But I noticed that I didn't feel that way anymore. It was like a wall had been removed. It was like the thought of hugging didn't bother me anymore. It was like it was gone, like it was taken. And I was missing people, and it was like, wow, like, I was sitting there and I was noticing, I'm like, God did something to me while I was out, because this wasn't something, it was like something you knew you had before, and now it's gone. And that's how I felt. So I'm in there and I'm like, okay, Like, but now God done lectured me. I done went off on me. God done lectured me. And I'm like, well, the nurses said they're not coming. I done took this catheter off. The matter of fact, they came down. You heard the dude, same African dude came down. He said, this is madness. Somebody's catheter is off. Why would anybody do that? They're going around. Why would somebody intentionally do this to themselves? And he's going around and he's trying to find it. I know the nurses said they want to come in here, but I'm just like, I'm waiting to see what happens. So they going around knocking on the doors trying to see whose catheter is off. There's your catheter working. So then I hear him say, well, the only person room he hasn't checked is this one. They say it's a power. The one girl say it's a power play. And it's like at the end of the day, they can't make us go in his room, so we're not going in there. They can't make all of us, because basically they can't fire all of us if we stick together. So that was their whole thing. We're gonna stick together. So I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay. Eventually the knocks stopped. They was like, we checked. They told him, he's like, we checked every room. Everybody catheter's working. He gave up, and he left. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I've committed this far. I'm going to take the catheter off. No help's coming. I'm going to have to. So I'm sitting here, I'm trying to muster my strength to sit back up to get at these shots. I'm like, I got to do it. So I'm sitting there, I'm gathering my strength, and I get ready to go sit up. And right when I go to sit up, 3 nurses walk into the room, new nurses. And I start babbling, telling them everything that happened, just like dumping out. And I mean, I'm whining like a little girl. And one of the nurses just started giggling. And I realized, I'm like, man, you sitting here whining like a little girl. I'm just like, you know, I felt like, man, I'm like, this is too much stuff to be going through with this bull, you know? And I'm telling her, and she said, well, they have to come in here. And I'm like, you're not here at night. No, they don't, because the nurse, Bernie, who was excellent nurse, that's why I said, I'm not letting the good nurses, the bad nurses, overshadow those who are good. Most of them in there were awesome people. And it was a few nuts in there. So I go in there, she go in there and she telling me, she know they have to come in this and this and this. And I'm telling her, I'm just like, because I'm fearing the night. Because I go and I tell her what happened. I said, I'm getting out of here today. I'm getting out of here today. I'm not going to sit here the nighttime. I'm not going through that again. And then she's like, you're leaving? You can't even move. What are you going to? She started going in. I had to start calling her mom because Bernie did not hold him up, man. She told it to me like it was. She was like, you can't even move. Who's going to take care of you? You can't even feed yourself. And I'm just sitting here like, man, like what am I supposed to do? She said, they have to take care of you. She said, they have to come in there. And this and this. I'm like, okay. So the whole day she's coming in and out of my room because they were pushing people out and they were turning that area into COVID recovery that I was in. And they were turning that into COVID recovery. So they were sending more nurses. Before there weren't a lot of nurses down there, which me looking back would make why the nurses were acting like that, because they had all these patients to care for. It was just a couple of them down there. They were short-staffed down there. And they probably just got tired, you know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm sure I couldn't have gotten like that, but you know, human nature. So they're in there throughout the day. I've given up on the whole escaping thing because again, Bernie they were coming back in there and she was talking to me, going over with me asked me how I feel. They were testing me, and then they were like, we're going to try to see if you can drink and eat. So I was happy about that. So they came in with some stuff, a few things, and they were like, you know, because I'm like, my whole thing, I'm like, why are y'all fussing on me? Again, nobody ever sat down and explained to me how bad I was. So they were like, okay, with water, because I'm like, they're babying me, just give me something to eat. I'm fine. That was my mentality. I'm fine. Give me something to eat, give me something to drink. Now. I want it now. That was my mentality going in there. Hangry is a thing, man. Don't let nobody tell you different. So they come in finally with water. They say, take a sip of water. Swallow. I swallow. They're like, okay. They gave me some juice. Oh man, I thought I was in heaven. I drank that juice and I was like, oh my God, it was like the best thing ever. I was like, oh yes, that's good. And they gave me some cups of fruit, the fruit cups. I ate them. I was like, yes. You swallow fine? I'm fine. Why are y'all making a fuss over me? So, so what was it? Was it that day? It was either that day or the next day. Because again, going to the night shift, different nurses had came in and were taking care of me. It wasn't the ones that was normally there, but it was new nurses. But I was finding that at times my door was being locked. My door was getting locked and the nurses couldn't get in. I thought the door was messed up at first. But then I started noticing when the nurses that normally work the floor, like if they were that were permanently transferred down there, were on the floor, they got in and out just fine. Whenever a nurse who said they were down here helping out, who wasn't normally over there, they couldn't get in the door. And I would ask them. So I started noticing them like, and they would be shaking and banging, and they would have to call, make phone calls, things like, I can't get into this room before the door would finally open. And it's like, yeah, open for me that time. I was like, they're locking the doors. The nutty ones, the ones that were, that didn't want anybody coming to my room, they were locking the doors. And believe me, it get worse because it was happening. It happened. Some nights it didn't happen at all, and some nights it all depended on who was working down there. It happened a lot. Till one nurse, I think she ended up, going back and forth because she was like having a hard time breathing. It sounded like she had emphysema. She was over there working on me, and I was like, you need a doctor more than I do, the way she was breathing. And I think she fell out because they were calling, because she had left out of the room, and then a new nurse, she never came back to my room because I was hearing them that's like, get help, because all the thing, and then my door stopped doing that after that, because I guess they were sending her through the ringer so much she was overexerting herself because of her health problems and stuff. She ended up falling out because, like I said, she was barely getting around. And but the next day I was sitting there, again, even though God had talked to me, I was trying my best to keep a good attitude, because I'm like, I'm not going to engage with these nurses anymore when they do something. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that whole tactician thing. I'm trying my best to get out of there. And then that's when a guy came down and he sat at my bed. He was like, you remember me? I was like, no. He was like, you probably wouldn't. He said, I'm the respiratory therapist that took care of you while you were while you were in ICU. And then he said, you don't want to. He said, what I do to you, you don't want to be awake for. What I do to you. Then he starts explaining to me how bad I was and what all people were doing. And he just started explaining to me. And then it was like my whole perspective of everything I had witnessed while I was in the hospital changed. And now I see what God was trying to say to me. I was only looking, the whole time I was in there, looking at things through my eyes. I wasn't trying to see through the other people's eyes. That's why when the nurses were breaking down, crying and stuff, I didn't understand. Because I started, why were nurses passing by my room when I was trying to flag them down? Because they're so overworked because of all the COVID patients coming in that, they're going from room to room, patient to patient. So if they stop to help me, they still got to go make up that time and then try to get their breaks in. I heard one nurse say, he said, when you're in there helping them, he said, they're all smiles. When you don't help them, he said, they frown up at you. He was like, one lady even gave me the finger. He was like, watch. And he waved at me. He gave me the thumbs up. I didn't know what he was doing. He gave me the thumbs up back. I didn't understand what's going on. I was just like, well, maybe, but I understood now. It was like the pressure that they were under, and trying to hold together. These people that they're working on dropping left and right. So I really never understood. And it was like the nurse that was in the room that ran and left me involved, they have to make choices. Because everybody up there was in ICU were in bad shape. And so they had to make choice. Oh, he need help, but I got to get to this guy and this, and you're making it. And that's why they're frustrated and crying out, because it was like they had to make a choice. They were so overwhelmed down there. And I never understood it. And the nurses, I'm like, I don't know what happened to those nurses or what they had to go through to make them that honoring and mean. I didn't understand it. But I'm like, no, you know, I knew it was God ministered to me. He said, because after what Jason said to me, he was like, I never understood. I'm like, you know, what made them this way? What did they go through? People don't come out and just be like that. He said, so if you're not willing to love a person past that, they'll just do it to somebody else. And I understood. It was like my whole perspective of everything changed. And that's when I tell people, I say I'm all about the love now. Because I understand the consequences now when you're not in it. But that's it for part 5, folks. I guess there's going to be a part 6. You be blessed if this is all you watch for today. I hope you all have a blessed and prosperous day. I pray the God of mercies be with you. In Jesus' name, amen.